Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and thank you once more for stopping by. This is a answers to some questions that I get asked frequently from time to time. Since the last time I did a video, it was just part one of this series, Starlink has moved on. I'm going to leave a link below to that. They're actually taking orders. People are doing it. I've seen it all over Facebook as people take their Starlink kits home with them, and I'll be hearing from them and what it's like to actually put it together and get it to work. I know some others have done it. It certainly does work, and it does for people who get very slow connections out in the countryside or in a mountain valley or something of this sort. It makes a huge difference, whether you live in the United States, or you live in India, or you live in Panama or Japan. So it's interesting, but it's not cheap. Anyhow, it's a little over half off right at the moment, and I'll put the link there for anybody who happens to be here and could really use it. Then first growth report. Now this is the monthly indicator of economic activity. The longtime readers of my reports understand are sort of the early word as to GDP, our gross national income, how it's moving along. Now, the wonderful part about it is that January started out with a 9.8% increase over a year before. That's exceptionally high, and that's not going to continue that way forever. We were already a double digit last year, but what happens in December is that we have a substantial amount of spending. It's a Mother's Day. There's one of two that are celebrated. This is a big one, though, early December. It's a traditional one. It is a big gift-giving day for mom and grandmom and everybody else who can qualify. And in addition, there's, of course, Christmas, there's Hanukkah. There's a lot of sales going on, et cetera, and so forth. So that's a boost to the economy. And then in January, things tend to go a little flat. There's not as much of this sort of economic activity going on, so you see a dip. Not this year, well, we get a little dip, but practically nothing, and nothing compared to similar periods in past years. So for whatever that means, it's interesting, but I don't expect a 9.8% growth rate for this year. They're still talking 4 to 5%, which to me usually means 7 maybe. We'll see. Yeah, it will be what it will be. Okay, for those of you who are into this sort of thing, I am, so I'm looking forward to it. This year we bid and we won for the World Robotics Olympiad. This is a huge thing, and I'm really looking forward to it. These are for kids, basically kids. Well, not entirely. Some of them are pretty old. But the age 8 through 19, they're from high schools and middle schools all over the world. They compete at local levels and then at sub-regional levels and regional levels, national levels, whatever you've got, all the way up until they come to the Olympiad, which is the global one. And we were competing with the U.S. and I think Mexico and a few others, and won this year. So we will be having that in, let's see, it's November 7th to 9th here. It's going to be wonderful. It's not a small deal, folks. There are going to be like 5,000 participants in this. Of course, that includes the adults, chaperones, et cetera, and so forth. But an awful lot of young people are going to be here in our new convention center. That's what made it possible to hold this, because they bring their stuff with them. They have several different categories and for different age groups. It is going to be a trip. I do expect to be down there sticking my nose into several of them. I want to see this stuff. These kids are bright, and they're way out in front of someone like me who can, still have trouble finding, how making the TV remote work just right. And they're doing all these wonderful things. So that's coming up in November. Glad to hear it. Now I get a number of messages, not huge numbers, but we do get them, saying, is Panama going to have a central bank digital currency called CBDC? No. In a nutshell, we're not going to have one. We can't have one. We have no central bank. And a central bank digital currency is one that's created by a central bank. You got to have a central bank. You don't have one. And we don't even have a currency to digitalize because we use the US dollar. We can't digitalize that. So and that has turned it into a sort of a electronic packet as opposed to a piece of paper. That could be done in the U.S. and will eventually probably be done in the U.S. Anyhow, we can't have it. So we're not going to have one along the lines there. We'll see, well, what are we going to do when they have them? Well, we'll take a look at what they have to offer and how the rest of the world deals with it and so on. We have the luxury, after a fashion, of being able to pick and choose. I'm going to put a link to Investopedia. I think does the best job of giving you an idea of what a CBDC is and how it's expected to operate and so forth and whatever. It is something that is coming along down the road. But it's not Panama. We have absolutely nothing to do with it, nothing we can do about it except make up our minds when the time comes. And it's a reminder time for everybody, if anybody out there hasn't heard of this already, is that Panama's constitution forbids, Panamanians forbid themselves from creating their own currency. And they do that because, well, and they've clung to it firmly all these years, and they are very, very determined to continue to, because they have so many people who come in this country as refugees from all over Latin America who are proud to have their own currency, but it ain't worth it anymore. It just collapsed, And so they're here, and they want to be here to earn dollars. That's another reason why I have many people coming in. We're very pleased. And I've always been happy to say, and I've said it many times, that in Panama, we earn every single dollar we spend. And if we borrow in dollars, we pay them back in dollars, and the interest in dollars, and all those dollars are earned too. So we can't print our own money. We have to earn it. And it has done a terrific job of maintaining lower inflation here. No, we don't follow the U.S. just because they happen to be the dollar creator. No, we've had lower inflation, a much more stable economy as a result, much more secure. I have been in Latin America and worked there at times when in Peru and Lima years ago, a few people may remember way back, I had to go down to the corner every time I wanted money, and I would change like as few dollars as possible. I would talk to a guy standing in the corner with, get this, a walkie-talkie, if any of you who are old enough to remember walkie-talkies, and he would call in to a central office and be told what the exchange rate at that moment was. And then he'd tell me, and I'd say, okay, and I give him whatever. He'd give me whatever it was in return, the local currency. They've had more than one, and I don't remember now which one it was. And I go back in, and I'd pay for my lunch, whatever it is I was spending money on. I might do this 4 or 5 times a day. The amount of money, the exchange rate, as a rule, changed every 15 minutes. 24 hours a day. At 2 a.m, I had to go down to the corner. If I was out that late, I had to go down to the corner to change money. I don't recommend that. So, as a result, Panama is very much attached to its use of the dollar, and it has worked out extremely well for them, and they're not about to go and jeopardize that. But by the same token, if for any reason they ever needed to, they can overnight change. They're not, have no requirement here. The government chooses, the only requirement the Constitution states is that you can't print your own. But, after that, you can decide what you want to use. And it works very well. So no, there will be no CBDC here. Yes, well, one thing, and please, half a dozen of you who are in the process of been so kind enough to send me a link where I can download Panama's government's digital strategy statement. Folks, that has absolutely nothing to do with currency. It's really best if you get one of these, instead of just sending it to me, telling me, aha, see, there is a digital currency, that you have somebody read it who can read Spanish. It's very clear. It's not currency. It's part of a regional-wide effort. Digitalized in this case means like computerized, we might have called it years ago. It's just taking data, and that currently cannot be used in a computer, a box of forms somewhere. A lot of this is going on at the local government level, and the topics are not kind to boxes of paper. So the idea being, we want to get everything on all formal records digitalized, so it can be put up and saved on multiple locations and on disks and what have you. Much easier to access, blah, blah, blah. So the strategy for doing this is pretty complete, because you have to go out there in each area and introduce this and get it done. So yes, thank you very much for sending me copies of the digital strategy, which I knew existed, but it has nothing to do with currency. Okie dokie. Oh, which brings us to another topic which has come up many times and most frequently at all. All right, just take a moment to drink a little water here. Love that stuff. Okay, it really is water now. Come on. And that's crypto. Now, cryptocurrency went through a phase here. There was legislation introduced at the National Assembly. When that happened, I certainly came out and said, 3 cheers, let's do this, because I wanted to see what they planned to do, how they planned to do it. I hadn't seen the legislation. I wasn't really interested until it went through all its readings and it got its approvals and this, and then we'd see the final product. But I have nothing against it at all, as long as it's done well and as long as it's secure and people can use it without concern and so on. Any event, so many things have happened since then. In the process of this, when it did get up to a point where it was at the cabinet level and the presidential level, what have you, the answer was no, we're not going to do that now. We'll wait and see. So it's been put on hold and put to one side. This is a very conservative country. We don't go charging around after things that to us is just may be the next big thing, or it may not. And right at the moment, there's a lot of complexity involved with crypto. So as a result, it is not scheduled to be accepted here. There are people who you can get it here, and if you find somebody who will accept it, you can spend it here. I mean, that's not a problem. But you can't use it to, buy things in the stores or pay taxes or one thing or another. Any event, that's where we stand with it. And I would like to think that we get our act together here, and not we, but the whole crypto community can get its act together and get something that we can adopt and give a try to and see how it works and feel comfortable that we're doing something that's fairly safe for the folks. In the yes, there's the question that comes up every 3 or 4 years. The dollar, what happens if I'm in a dollar economy and the dollar collapses? Well, if you're in a dollar economy and the dollar collapses, nothing much happens because you've got dollars and that's what they sell things in is dollars. But the critical point is that if you're concerned about it happening suddenly and rapidly, I'm not, but a lot of people are right now thinking that it could happen very suddenly, very dramatically. It's high, you see now. And if it falls, it would have to fall incredibly quickly to get down to what would be considered a low level. And that has yet to occur. So the simple point of this is that there's one easy way to deal with this. I've said this many times. I don't want to spend 20 minutes on it. Just get right down to it, which is if you don't own any dollars, you don't care. When I talk to groups, I often run into this. I say, do you know what the exchange rate for the yen is, or for the rupiah from India, or whatever? And they'll say, no, of course not. I say, why don't you know? Well, they don't have any. If you don't have any of a currency, you don't care what happens to that currency. It can fall through the floor, fine. What you don't want to do, if you're really concerned about this and you truly believe that at any moment it could collapse, is to get out of the dollar now and put it in something else and withdraw whatever that something else is only as you need it to pay dollar bills for dollar bills in the sense of payments. And then when you're ready, when it falls and collapses apart, then you're living in a country, a dollar economy, where the price, everything will be cheap for a while, until everybody recovers and the prices rise in the new currency, but whatever. The point is that at that stage of the game, you will have something very valuable, while everybody else is stuck with something that isn't, and that's the best position to be in. So the worst thing to do, though, is to be here and convinced this is happening, and then it happens, and then it's too late, guys. Then people will, this is something that's found, the value of the dollar is found every day. It's a $7.5 trillion market every day. I know the foreign exchange market very well, from years of experience dealing with it overseas, and also from the trading viewpoint. It is good luck to you. But any event, timing that market is a challenge. It's so huge, it can eat up everybody who's listening to this video, and every penny you had could be all put together. We could toss it into the pot and it would be instantly gone and nobody would notice. So it is giant, and I recommend you be very cautious in thinking that you know what's going to happen to it. It has been all over the map, and it's been far lower than it is now and not collapsed. So I'm not particularly concerned about it, but if you are, just take care of it. You have to make a decision at some point as to what it is you want your dollars in to keep them safe. And you should always try to do that when you don't have to worry about it, as opposed to trying to do it when everybody's trying to do it. Okay. Then, of course, we get down to the Darien. Now, the Darien, now we are told, and in a few days, the stats will come out for this last month, told that there's been a dramatic drop, or a substantial drop in the number of people crossing at the Darien, which would be wonderful news if that's the case. I know there's been a joint Colombia, Panama, U.S., and UN, and France and Spain and everybody else seems to have something to toss in the pot here, effort to try to get this thing straightened out, or at least under control. And the challenge here is on the Colombian side, because if they don't get set off on that trek, then we're okay, because they're not going to be killing themselves. It's just a horrible, horrible situation. We never said much about it at all because we didn't want to advertise it and encourage people to come that route. But because a lot of people made an issue out of it in the last year or so, bam, it became a huge issue. And indeed, it attracted tens of thousands of people instead of putting them off. Because, if we can make it through, then they'll feed us, take care of our medical problems and help us get on to the next border and so on. So that's why we didn't talk much about it. It wasn't a secret. I wanted to stress 100 times over, it was not a secret. You can get on the internet and government sites, and they have been publishing every month the crossings at that particular site. I mean, exactly the situation, not something similar, no, the actual Darien crossing, except for now I have 13 years and 4 months worth of that data, which works out to be about 160 months of it. It was very few people initially, and it continued to be that way for the longest time. Then it became, on the social media, a big thing, and bang, we went right through the ceiling. Now, the current numbers, however, have fallen back. The last ones had clearly about 60% of the people were from one place, and that was from Venezuela. Haitians had fallen way back. A lot of people were concerned about Chinese. I got some concerned messages. They represented about 4% in March and in April. These guys are in debt up to their ears. Some $30,000 is not uncommon for the coyotes, so to speak, for the people who are involved in getting them over here to cross the Pacific to come all the way here. They're male and they're young because only one person from the family, hopefully, in any likelihood, be able to get on the debt or the money or whatever to come over. So the family all puts into it, the plan being that when he gets located in the United States, he hopes that then he can bring the family over to join him. That's the dream, all right. And they come through this whole process. And there have been I've seen photos, I understand there are videos of, groups of dozens and dozens of Chinese all standing around at the Darien Gap. Guys, they're standing around talking to each other because they don't speak Spanish. So they hang out with each other. And it looks like this gigantic crowd of Chinese, when in fact, it's only 4% of the people who arrived there that day. There's another 96% scattered around too, So it just exaggerates it. You can't tell a Venezuelan from a Colombian. You can't. I mean, maybe you could guess that if you lived with them long enough. Otherwise, no, you're not going to be able to. So you won't see huge groups of Venezuelans sitting around talking to each other and worry about that. I wouldn't worry about it anyhow. So that's the situation there. I want to stress that I'll just pass on. I'm not trying to take sides in anything here. I think it's a very distressing thing. I hope they can get it under control. But many of those people are trying to get away from persecution. And I have one article. I read a lot of stuff, and I look in many different areas when I into any of these things. And when this came up as an issue, of course, I went around and started reading, and a fairly substantial number of these people are actually evangelical Christians, which is fine. I mean, I'm not here to, to promote a religion or anything of this sort. But if you remember the late Billy Graham, Reverend Graham in the United States, he was a very, very popular pastor with many people other than just evangelical Christians. One of the things he did was set up a magazine called Christianity Today, and it's you might say the intellectual or the philosophical, whatever, higher level sort of magazine, evangelical church, and it's very popular. It has a wide readership amongst the leadership. Now you want to, I'm going to leave a link here repeating that this is not a endorsement of any sort of religious philosophy or whatever, but they have followed these people. They have a major effort in converting people in China. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody, does it? And they have followed them. They follow them over here. They follow them up. And they're trying, in this article, they're trying to prepare the Chinese churches in the United States for the receipt of these groups coming up to the border. If they can get across the border, they're going to be arriving. And it's very straightforward. They're people talking to each other. They're not trying to impress anybody. They're trying to get the message across. And it's a very realistic view and discussion of the situation. I thought, well, I'll put it up. And that maybe helps a little bit in giving a broader perspective of what's going on in the Darien now. So that'll be a link beneath too. So this is that. And with luck and hope and prayer and whatever, perhaps we can get this situation down to a much smaller level and eventually bring some end to it. But it's, it's not going to be overnight, but they say, actually showing progress. So we'll see, and I'll let you know one way or the other. It is all these things, CBDC, crypto, they're not major issues in this country, and neither is the Darien situation, although people are very familiar with it. The point is that we don't see them. If you don't see them, it doesn't really mean anything to you. They don't marching through the city. They're not marching along the highway or anything of this sort. We bust them up as much as we can. They do pay in to, I think it's $40 a head for that, and they commonly have brought money with them. They have some left. If they don't, then we look to churches, sometimes local people and so on who chip in and whatever, to get them on the bus, to get them up to Costa Rica. Costa Rica meets them with buses and moves them on. We know, and they know exactly where they want to go and why. So having them stuck here, especially out there in the Far East and Darien, doesn't make any sense at all. We're not going to have that. So it has to happen that way. We have no choice. As I say to people, we aren't the problem. We're just on the way, okay? And when you're on the way to something, and a lot of countries, smaller countries with smaller budgets than some than we have to deal with this, and it is not an easy task. So we'll hope that gets better. So this is to answer some of those questions. We don't focus on that here because we're focusing on you living here in Panama and what's happening. I've got to get back to more of that. It's harder these days because everybody's so wrapped up in issues that are, Europeans have plenty of them, and my European members love you dearly. You have you bring your own with you, as do Asians, and of course North Americans and other Latin Americans. So we're such an island sometimes, an island surrounded by this, and we do our best. And we are now a haven for people from all over the world. But if you come expecting us to be a particular type and agree with you on all issues or something like that, if you've been, this has been shared with you by people who want your money and convince you that we're very right-wing or very left-wing or very whatever, and this sort of stuff, that we have a strong political agenda here, it's wrong. And what we have an agenda of is tolerance. That is, we get along with each other because we have people who supported the Venezuelan regime, we had people who didn't, and they did not get along, and we had to they were spoken to very firmly and told, no more, stop. There was one almost explosion and violence between the two. This is years ago when it was first getting, over a decade when it was first underway. It's happened more than once. I've been here. The government's very firm, and we try tell people you have any viewpoint you want, but keep it to yourself, your friends, and whomever it is you're sitting around with having a barbecue in the backyard, or a beer in the bar. But we don't get each other involved in each other's issues. It just doesn't make sense, and it really hurts everybody in the long run. So that's the fact. And I hope you haven't been fed a line about you're going to get this or that. It's going to be the way we are. No, we are. Panamanians are who they want to be, and they're really very strong on that. They've had plenty of people, the Spanish, the Americans before. Lots of folks, right on up until today, with all of this stuff about money and how to handle bank transfers and everything else. They've been treated with well, let's just say that they're fed up and tired of everybody else's disputes. So we're delighted to have people here, just as long as they understand that they're, we all want to get along with each other. Okay, that's basically it. Otherwise, I will be back. I'm trying to get out to one place to do a little bit more photo work, maybe a little video work, and finally get that food thing done. I'm just dissatisfied with what I have now. So I want to talk more about it because it's becoming more and more useful. And in the meantime, I want to say Panama Wave is moving along very well. That project is coming along, and we're having people. Next week is going to be a busy week too. So we're happy to be able to help people when they need it, if they need it, at their request. Thank you for stopping by. I look forward to seeing you again next time.